Studio at 620 WMNF Radio Theater Project presents Eugene O'Neill's one-act play, Before Breakfast, adapted for radio and directed by Dewey Davis Thompson.
Alfred? Alfred? You needn't pretend you're asleep. What's this in your coat pocket then, Alfred? Dear Alfie. Ooh, love, Helen. I knew it. Oh, Alfred, Alfred. Alfred? Alfred! Don't you think it's about time you got up? Do you want to stay in bed all day? Not that I've got any doubts about your being lazy enough to stay in bed forever. Goodness knows what time it is. We haven't even got any way of telling the time since you pawned your watch like a fool. The last valuable thing we had, and you knew it. It's been nothing but pawn, pawn, pawn with you. Anything to put off getting a job. Anything to get out of going to work like a man. Oh. Alfred, get up. Do you hear me? I want to make the bed before I go out. I'm sick of having this place in a continual muss on your account. Not that we'll be here long unless you manage to get some money someplace. Heaven knows I do my part and more. Going out to sew every day while you play the gentleman and loaf around barrooms with that good-for-nothing lot of artists from the square. And where are you going to get money, I'd like to know? The rent's due this week, and you know what the landlord is. He won't let us stay a minute over our time. You say you can't get a job? Oh, that's a lie, and you know it. You never even look for one. All you do is moon around all day, writing silly poetry and stories that no one will buy, and no wonder they won't. I notice I can always get a position, such as it is, and it's only that which keeps us from starving to death. You'll have to get money today someplace. I can't do it all, and I won't do it all. You've got to come to your senses. You've got to beg, borrow, or steal it somewhere. But where, I'd like to know. You're too proud to beg, and you've borrowed the limit, and you haven't the nerve to steal. Aren't you up yet, for heaven's sakes? It's just like you to go to sleep again, or pretend to. Oh, well, you are up. Well, it's about time. You needn't look at me like that. Your airs don't fool me a bit anymore. I know you too well. Better than you think I do, you and your goings-on. I know a lot of things, my dear. Never mind what I know now. I'll tell you before I go. You needn't worry. I suppose I might as well get breakfast ready. Not that there's anything much to get, unless you have some money. Foolish question. I ought to know you better than that by this time. When you left here in such a huff last night, I knew what would happen. You can't be trusted for a second. A nice condition you came home in. The fight we had was only an excuse for you to make a beast of yourself. What was the use of pawning your watch if all you wanted with the money was to waste it buying drink? Oh, hurry up. It don't take long to get breakfast these days, thanks to you. All we got this morning is bread and butter and coffee. And you wouldn't even have that if it wasn't for me sewing my fingers off. The bread's stale. I hope you like it. You don't deserve any better, but I don't see why I should suffer. The coffee will be ready in a minute, and you needn't expect me to wait for you. What on earth are you doing all this time? Well, you're almost dressed at any rate. I expected to find you back in bed. That'd be just like you. Oh, how awful you look this morning. Oh, for heaven's sake, shave. You're disgusting. You look like a tramp. No one will give you a job. I don't blame them when you don't even look halfway decent. Oh, there's plenty of hot water right here. You've got no excuse. Here. Oh, look at your hand tremble. You'd better give up drinking. You can't stand it. It's just your kind that gets the DTs. That would be the last straw. Oh, look at the mess you've made on this floor. Cigarette butts and ashes all over the place. Why can't you put them on a plate? No, you wouldn't be considerate enough to do that. You never think of me. You don't even have to sweep up the room, and that's all you care about. Hurry up. It must be nearly time for me to go. If I'm late, I'm liable to lose my position, and then I couldn't support you any longer. And then you'd have to go to work or something dreadful like that. What I want to know is whether you're going to look for a job today or not. You know your family won't help us anymore. They've had enough of you, too. I'm about sick of all this. I've got a good notion to go home. If I wasn't too proud to let them know what a failure you've been. You, the millionaire Roland's only son, the Harvard graduate, the poet, the catch of the town. Huh. There wouldn't be many of them now envy me my catch if they knew the truth. What has our marriage been? I'd like to know. Even before your millionaire father died, owing everyone in the world money, you certainly never wasted any of your time on your wife. I suppose you thought I ought to be glad you were honorable enough to marry after getting me into trouble. You were ashamed of me with your fine friends because my father's only a grocer. That's what you were. Well, at least he's honest, which is more than anyone could say about yours. You hoped everyone would think you'd been forced to marry me and pity you, didn't you? You didn't hesitate much about telling me you loved me and making me believe your lies before it happened, did you? You made me think you didn't want your father to buy me off, as he tried to do. I know better now. I haven't lived with you all this time for nothing. It's lucky the poor thing was born dead after all. What a father you'd have been. But I'm not the only one who's got you to thank for being unhappy. There's one other, at least, and she can't hope to marry you now. How about Helen? Don't look at me that way. Yes, I read her letter. What about it? I've got a right to. I'm your wife, and I know all there is to know, so don't lie. You needn't stare at me so. You can't bully me with your superior airs any longer. Only for me, you'd be going without breakfast this very morning. You never did have any gratitude for what I've done. The coffee's ready. I'm not going to go wait for you. Oh, my head aches so this morning. It's a shame I've got to go to work in a stuffy room all day in my condition, and I wouldn't if you were half a man. By rights, I ought to be lying on my back instead of you. You know how sick I've been this last year, and yet you object when I take a little something to keep my spirits up. You didn't even want me to take that tonic I got at the drugstore. I know you'd be glad to have me dead and out of your way. Then you'd be free to run after all those silly girls that think you're such a wonderful, misunderstood person. This Helen and the others. Oh, there. I knew you'd cut yourself. It'll be a lesson to you. You know you oughtn't to be running around nights drinking with your nerves in such awful shape. Oh, what makes you so pale? What are you staring at yourself in the mirror that way for? Oh, for goodness sake, wipe that blood off your face. It's horrible. Oh, oh, there. That's better. I never could stand the sight of blood. You'd better give up trying and go to a barber shop. Your hand shakes dreadfully. Why do you stare at me like that? Are you still mad at me about that letter? Well, I had the right to read it. I'm your wife. I knew all the time you were running around with someone. Your lame excuses about spending the time at the library didn't fool me. Who is this Helen, anyway? One of those artists? Or does she write poetry, too? Her letter sounds that way. I'll bet she told you your things were the best ever, and you believed her, like a fool. Is she young and pretty? I was young and pretty, too, when you fooled me with your fine poetic talk, but life with you would soon wear anyone down. What I've been through. Breakfast is ready. Breakfast. Your coffee will be cold. What are you doing? Still shaving, for heaven's sakes. You better give it up. One of these mornings you'll give yourself a serious cut. I have to run as soon as I've finished eating. One of us has got to work. Are you going to look for a job today, or aren't you? I should think some of your fine friends would help you if they really think you're so much. But I guess they just like to hear you talk. I'm sorry for this Helen, whoever she is. Haven't you got any feelings for other people? What will her family say? I see she mentions them in her letter. What is she going to do? Have the child? Or go to one of those doctors? That's a nice thing, I must say. Where can she get the money? Is she rich? You won't tell me anything about her, will you? Much I care, come to think of it. I'm not so sorry for her after all. She knew what she was doing. She isn't any schoolgirl like I was, from the looks of her letter. Does she know you're married? Of course she must. All your friends know about your unhappy marriage. I know they pity you, but they don't know my side of it. They'd talk different if they did. Oh. This Helen must be a fine one. If she knew you were married, what does she expect then? That I'll divorce you and let her marry you? Does she think I'm crazy enough for that after all you've made me go through? I guess not. And you can't get a divorce for me, and you know it. No one can say I've ever done anything wrong. She deserves to suffer. That's all I can say. I'll tell you what I think. I think your Helen is no better than a common streetwalker. That's what I think. Oh, did you cut yourself again? Serves you right. Oh, well, I've got to run along. This is a fine life for me to be leading. I wouldn't stand for your loafing any longer. Oh, there. You've overturned the water all over everything. Don't say you haven't. I can hear it dripping on the floor. Alfred? Why don't you answer me? Alfred? Alfred, answer me! What is it you knocked over? Are you still drunk? Alfred!
Before Breakfast by Eugene O'Neill was presented by Studio at 620 WMNF Radio Theater Project with Bonnie Hagan as Mrs. Rowland. Sound effects by Matt Cowley. Sound mixer, Mark Perfetti. Studio 620 technician, William Labarge. I'm your announcer, Leroy Mitchell.